Next Curve.
Welcome, everyone, to this episode of Next Curve's reThink podcast. And you know what we do here? We break down the latest tech and industry events and happenings into the insights that matter. And I'm Leonard Lee, executive analyst at Next Curve. And in this Silicon Futures episode, we're going to be talking about the happenings of February. No doubt we're going to be talking about NVIDIA because I need to get the take from Jim McGregor, the highly accelerated Jim McGregor of Tirias Research.
Hey, you sound like I'm stoned or something.
I know. Yeah. I don't know. You could be. I use this from Carl too, so I'm just, recycling, recycling titles. We're gonna try to talk about NVIDIA as little as possible, but I'm afraid that's not going to be possible. But I have my good friend, Jim McGregor here. Hey, Jim, how's it going?
Good. How you doing?
You have a very peaceful background.
Actually, you should see the other one I should have put up. I spent a week up in Alaska watching the aurora.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah. Well, you're going to have to tell me about it when we're in Barcelona next week, or at least, actually on Saturday. So, hopefully you had a great time. I had some
It was spectacular. It's
okay.
Definitely worth it.
Okay, well, we don't have a lot of time, so we got to get on with it. But before we do, please remember to like, share, and react and comment on this episode. Also, subscribe here on YouTube and Buzzsprout to listen to us on your favorite podcast platform. Opinions and statements made by Jim are entirely his own and don't reflect those of Next Curve or myself. So we're doing this.
We get the legal disclaimer.
Yeah. Come on, man. Don't give me a hard time here. We're doing this to provide an open forum for discussion and debate on things related to technology and happenings in the semiconductor and AI world. So in this installment, yes, we're going to be probably kicking things off with NVIDIA because we both just got off of a series of calls post earnings. So, Jim, want your take? What did you think? I mean, we had the earnings calls. We had several pre-briefings and briefings post-earnings calls. So what was your take on things?
Well, first off, NVIDIA's still charging ahead. We had the whole DeepSeek scare, and Wall Street kind of got it wrong, thinking that, it's going to drive down demand for GPUs. No, demand actually drives demand for GPUs. So, no, they're in a very good position. They've got a full stack solution from the chips to the boards to the systems to the software. They are cranking. Their earnings are great. They even beat estimates. They're projecting a great Q1, which is actually usually when we're down a bit in our industry.
Yeah.
So, there were a couple soft spots in gaming on their earnings, but that was pre-launch of their new Blackwell platforms. Yeah. So you kind of expect that a little bit. But other than that, they're now making money, or they're now increasing revenue once again in robotics and automotive, which they kind of lump together, but most of that's automotive.
Yeah.
And they're doing great in the data center, and they're still preferred solution. And we're 2 weeks out from GTC where, we're going to see some new products from them. I have no doubt about that. So
yeah. I mean, they have to keep the train moving, right? They got to keep this feverish pace going, and I kind of beg to differ with you as well as Carl, because Carl was on yesterday. In terms of the DeepSeek impact, I think it hasn't been studied very well. Everyone keeps, if you're focusing on R1, you're missing the point. In view, there's a lot of unknowns related to V3 that have not been explored, or maybe people just don't want to see it the way that they should see it. But I think the jury's still out, and the results don't bake in the DeepSeek impact, because I think that's going to be organic. It's not going to be hype-based or speculative. I think it's going to be a material thing that's going to be impacted by what I call token dumping, which is actually a reality, right? The price of tokens, not the cost, that being something different, is collapsing because of DeepSeek R1. And so, yeah, let's see how that plays out, because, I think this is the beauty of what we do here in this collaboration is we have, different points of view, and we converge on things that we've kind of distilled into what we think is a grounded perspective, right? I mean, I think, obviously your view is that your view is grounded, and so do I. But I think the interesting synthesis that happens is when we have these debates and take two divergent points of view and then distill into something that's even better. So
I think the only thing you can really take effectively from DeepSeek is the fact that, it points to a new trend. We're going to see a lot of DeepSeeks pop up. We're going to see a lot of companies pop up, whether they're using their own data, somebody else's data. We're going to have all kinds of providers of models out there in the market. And it's more competition. It's going to drive down prices. But I mean, I think that's the only thing we can really take from DeepSeek at this point in time is the fact that this is just the beginning. We're going to see an explosion of different models and service providers and everything else. This is not just a big guy's game. It's not just going to be OpenAI. It's not just going to be Microsoft or Google or anybody else. There's going to be a ton of solutions.
Yeah. And that's disruption, though. I mean, that's like Facebook disruption, what's happening. And so, one of the things that I was really curious about, and I'd like to get your reaction to this, is it seems like this whole notion of post-training is becoming really, let's say, divergent, or there's a lot of contradictions there in terms of themes. One of the things that Jensen mentioned on the call yesterday were the 3 scaling observations, right? I refuse to call them laws, by the way. It's just observations. It's weird because his position is that there's going to be more compute dedicated to post-training when I think R1, okay, and I'm not talking about V3, R1 with the distillation approaches and sort of these novel things that they did with fine-tuning, that connotes something, I think, a little bit opposite of what, or sort of a headwind dynamic versus what Jensen was suggesting on the call. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I think, I don't think the future is necessarily a single open model or a single model. I think it is a mixture of experts where you're going to be using a lot of models that are, and I think that's where that post-training comes in. The post-training comes in to where you're optimizing it either for a particular application, a particular workload, a particular use model, whatever. Sometimes even for a particular company based on their information, like you want a maintenance app or something like that. So I think that's where he's referring to, is the fact that a lot of people are going to take these open models, and whether it's DeepSeek, whether it's Llama, whether it's whatever, they're going to take these and they're going to do a lot more post-training on them to shrink them down, to optimize them and everything else. So I think that's where he's coming from. And no, it doesn't take the 100,000 GPU clusters to do that, but it does drive more cycles. It does drive a lot more use. And quite honestly, it's a good sign because it drives AI closer to applications.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's where the impact of, this token dumping that's happening right now. And that's probably a pretty mean term. Maybe I should soften it a bit, but in my view, it is kind of like a dumping.
It's kind of dumping, they're trying to undercut everyone's price. But they're doing it even below their cost.
Well, we'll see about that, right? Or who knows? They might be giving it for free. But see, that's the other thing. I think the monetization question is a big one. I know, like in the NVIDIA circles, they like to put revenue ahead of the equation. Demand does not equal monetization unless you're charging for that demand, right?
And so you have to have a business model, and
and that I think is huge. It's a huge problem that I think is pretty persistent and hasn't been resolved or abridged in the past, I would say, 2 years.
It's just like the start of the internet. When Yahoo and all these other companies came out, and most of them didn't have a business plan to make money. There's always a fallout. There's a correction.
Yeah.
And we end up with something that's actually very effective in the end.
Yeah, well, come on, Jim. No, I saw a lot of business plans back then. They just weren't that good.
You're right. They weren't. They didn't have a business plan to make money. They weren't. I mean, everyone was just jumping in because they wanted a foothold. I mean, Meta's giving stuff away as fast as they can, with no business model to make money off of Llama. They just want to be the de facto for people.
But I think that's where this whole question of operational AI is interesting, because I think Meta and some of the hyperscalers are different in the value proposition, let's say, of generative AI as an operational tool or technology versus for an enterprise, where you're trying to
make money off it through their own businesses.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be difficult to but this would be like, let's say, maybe raising the competitive parity bar versus actually creating new value, right? The actual revenues might just be the same. You're just either, you could be fabricating eyeballs, which then raises the question of how legitimate is this revenue that's being generated? Is it delivering real economic value versus just, let's say, printing tokens? You know what I'm saying? I think those are the things that are actually those topics are interestingly starting to converge, or at least be expressed in the discussion. So I think it's a really exciting time to be talking about, generative AI, but then also NVIDIA's role and how things are shifting.
Well, and one of the things I think, and I've said this on previous podcasts, is I think every company out there needs to not just ask how they can use AI, but how is AI going to change their business model?
Yeah.
And very few companies are asking that, even tech companies. I give Jensen credit, because when I asked it of him last year, he looked at me and says, Jim, I wish I knew. I don't know where NVIDIA is going to be in 10 years. He's just kind of going with the flow and going after opportunities as they arise. And that's pretty much what you have to do.
Yeah. Okay. Well, anything else you want to talk about regarding NVIDIA? I thought you'd have a lot more to say, or did I just crowd you out?
Well, no, you took it down a particular avenue. No, NVIDIA is making a big, where NVIDIA also has a strong presence, and we're starting to see other companies trying to enter that and use the same terminology, and they term it physical AI. And that's related to robotics and autonomous machines. And, while the rest of the industry is focused on agentic AI right now, just trying to create agents for everyone to use, they're focused on that next step. And that is really marrying AI to robotics. And it was funny because, we've all dreamed about the house robot since the 50s with the Jetsons and, and all that stuff. But it's, this may actually be a time, either whether it's this year or by the end of the decade, we're going to see robotics take a leap beyond just, I think, the manufacturing floor to being practical solutions and even humanoid solutions. I was impressed with some of the ones I saw at CES. I was like, wow. When they're walking up to me and shaking my hand, I was like, okay, I'm impressed.
Yeah, you can underestimate how difficult that is.
You can.
Right?
Yes, you can. It's just the simple thing of twisting off a bottle cap, shaking a hand, anything that requires some level of sensitivity, complex motion is very, very challenging. But, we took a major step with AI in teaching computers how to learn. And that translates more to robotics than any other application.
Yeah, it's interesting. That handshaking robot, I think the name of the company is it UB? The name escapes me.
There were about 3 of them.
Yeah, but there was one that did walk up to you. It didn't have like a head. It had like this strange donut type of thing as a head. It walked up to you and it would shake your hand, right? And so I took a video of it, posted on on YouTube. And one of the comments was, so what? And so everything you just said. I mean, obviously, some people don't appreciate and maybe don't understand how difficult it is to make something like that happen. But yes, simple things like that are tough.
And when you think about how manual certain processes still are, like agriculture, especially when it comes to like picking fruit or something like that, that's very delicate. We're in a state where robots could actually physically do that now. And we could overcome, and that's an area where we have a huge area of labor shortage. So there are not to mention healthcare where we have a labor shortage. There are a lot of very practical applications where having a humanoid or humanoid type robot, or at least having those kind of capabilities, is going to play a huge factor. So I think it's incredible to watch.
Yeah, and I wouldn't give the folks doing agentic AI stuff a hard time though, because I'm trying to renew my global entry, and it's going to take 14 months. And so I think agentic AI would be really nice.
No,
accelerated that.
Well, I'm just telling you now, what's going to happen, especially if you already have it, is you're going to get a message in about a month that says, "Oh, well, you're already pre-approved."
Yeah. Well, anyway,
just warning, you're going to come. It's happened to myself and everyone else I know. So
yeah. Okay. Anyway, so anything else on NVIDIA? Because I want to pick your brains on other things, because a lot of stuff happened in February, and I'm sure.
Let's move on. I mean,
let's move on.
It's always going to be top of stack, but let's keep going.
Yeah. Okay. The one thing that I want you to respond to or share your reactions to / thoughts. This stuff about the NVIDIA Intel split, right? And Broadcom and TSMC. The whole deal that's going on right now, or the rumors.
First off, that won't go through. It will not go through because you've got two foreign entities that the U.S. government's never going to approve, especially when they have investments there, and Intel's designated as one of those critical suppliers. So that won't go through. And I quite honestly, I think even the proposal of doing it this time is still a foolish mistake. I think you need Intel, especially as where it's developing its foundry services and getting its product strategy back on track. You still need it as a combined entity at this point in time. I think separating you're not only hamstringing the entities that used to be Intel, but also the companies that acquire them. And I think that's the biggest challenge.
Yeah. And quite simply, in my view, you're killing off the leadership dynamic, and folks who don't see that, you're doing the U.S. industry, semiconductor industry, and the objectives of, achieving U.S. technological leadership in manufacturing, you're undermining it. And unfortunately, there's a lot of folks out there who are advocating for it, and I think it's highly misguided. If you just,
I do too. I do too.
Yeah. Oh no, I'm dangerously so, because the thing is that we can't forget that Intel has a huge ecosystem. There are a lot of different industries. Telco, we're going to MWC next week. Telco industry. You want to talk about ORAN, Open RAN, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of it is x86 Intel bound, right? And you start messing with that, you mess with a lot of strategic technologies and themes that, at the moment cannot be hobbled. If you do that just because you want to make some quick buck on, banking fees or whatever, M&A transaction fees, you're really doing a disservice. I mean, there's a bigger picture here that really needs to be recognized. It's just something that really bothers me, Jim. So I'm glad that at least you and I are on the same page with this, and I'm sure that Carl is as well.
And the biggest thing you have to consider is Intel's value as a whole, to the entire industry in terms of R&D. They have the largest R&D budget of I know. And they continue to invest. And quite honestly, without them, the entire industry wouldn't be where it is today. And a lot of that is still tied together. It extends from deep product technologies like laser-based optics to silicon optics and to neuromorphic computing to manufacturing to semiconductor process technologies and transistor designs and everything else. Losing that right now, well, first off, you can't really separate the two right now, and I think that would be a huge loss. Unfortunately, Wall Street has always undervalued, I think, R&D.
Yeah. And I think that's shooting the industry in the foot. My personal opinion. Okay, so good. Hey, we agreed on something. I think we agree on a lot more than we'd like to admit. But the other thing, you probably want to talk about ARM and their new announcement, right? You and I were on the call. No.
When is this?
The Edge AI IoT.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
What do you think?
Well, they are putting together a platform, more competitive. It's what really amazes me about the announcement that they've made right now is the fact that they're bringing down. They've basically broken the barrier between their A class, which is the application CPU cores, and the M class, which are the embedded microcontroller cores. So they've broken that barrier to where they overlap now. So it now comes down to a system design option of you need, do you need onboard memory like a microcontroller? What I/O do you need? What's your power budget? It really gets down to where it's broken the barrier between an MCU and an MPU, and I think that's the biggest part of the announcement for me. They're coming out with the A320, which is the most power efficient A-class core they've ever come out with, which can still do high-end or high-level applications and operating systems. And they're also announcing, obviously, kind of a revision of Ethos, their AI core, which is mostly for embedded applications. So, no, they're still targeting their core market, which is embedded and IoT segment. And I think they really. It's funny because you might say they're creating more complexities for designers to figure out what they want to use. But this really, I think, breaks down that barrier between the microcontroller and the processor. And I think that's really good for a lot of designers. Yeah.
And, it might just be ARM tuning into sort of this trend where you do have power efficient AI compute, if you will, or edge AI, now making its way further out toward the very edge of the edges out there. And, I think that's also another thing that Qualcomm's recognized for quite some time, or at least that's a core part of their strategy, which leads us to Dragonwing. Right? What did you think about that? They were inspired by Tirias Research Purple.
Well, first off, I've been encouraging them to break off separate brands for different markets for over 5 years, ever since they introduced their automotive product line. I think that's good. I think they need a little bit more brand diversification to separate that out. And sticking with at least Dragon in the title, I think helps create that recognition. And they really need to do that. They've always had the philosophy of mobile first, and that's fine. And that's good because it really shows their commitment to low power and focus on performance efficiency. However, especially as they've gotten into these other markets, they do have to invest not just in that low power, but in specialty technologies and for each different product area, whether it's automotive or IoT or whatever, or networking or even data center. So I think that helps establish the fact that yes, we're not just a smartphone company. We are focused on other markets, and we do recognize that both our investment in R&D and our investment in our brand should recognize that.
Yeah, and that point on R&D, I think that's one of the leadership that they have in a lot of different categories in compute as well as wireless connectivity. I think those are the things that really position them well And I think what we're probably going to see, and this might take time because as you know, these brownfield IoT environments across different industries tend to stick around for a really long time, right? What I'm going to be interested in seeing is how the industry, players like Qualcomm, ARM, NXP, others can take this edge AI theme and then change the thinking about what these edge IoT industrial / whatever systems look like, right? Because fundamentally there has to be a re-architecting of, away from what you might consider legacy to this new one where, the infrastructure is going to look different. The system deployments are going to look different, and the way that you place compute and data is going to be different, and that's kind of a heavy lift. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So how all of these guys maneuver into this future vision they have of a transformed industry, right? End market industry is going to be really interesting. It's going to be a tough journey, I think, for a lot of these guys. But
well, it was kind of awkward. AI was kind of awkward for the IoT and embedded segments because it's kind of like bolt-on, and that's what a lot of companies, especially startups, were kind of proposing. Okay, you've got your microcontroller, you got your microprocessor unit, you bolt on this accelerator, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't work when you're dealing with form factor, cost, power, efficiency issues. You need a holistic solution. So you have to start with AI in mind and build up. Qualcomm, for example, is probably the best company we know of at heterogeneous computing. Elements that they can, different compute elements they can put on a chip, it's phenomenal and make it really power efficient. Synaptics is doing a good job with some of their new products. NXP, Microchip, Renesas, all these guys, ST, are all good at doing certain things. But definitely the generation of products we have to see have to be designed from AI from AI from the start, and they have to have this heterogeneous architecture to be able to do it. More importantly, though, I think we need kind of open platforms to be able to develop the solutions on, because what we've seen also is that everyone has their own tools, everyone has their own platforms, and you have to optimize for the platform. That doesn't work for developers. You really need open standards. Synaptics is one that's tried to create, and they've tried to offer theirs as an open standard, and there's other companies trying to do that too, but there's not one out there at this point in time. So it's going to be I think it's still going to be a challenge for a while for the embedded market, but you're starting to see the lights go on. That's the good part. I think the most important thing to talk about is the fact that all the things we have coming up. We have several major events coming up where we're going to see a ton of announcements. Some have already come out this week prior to Mobile World Congress and Embedded World, but there's going to be a lot more coming. We have Mobile World Congress in Barcelona. We have Embedded World in Nuremberg. The following week we have GTC in San Jose. There's OFC. There's an IBM event. There's OFC, Intel Vision, and MediaTek event all the week after that. It's a crazy time.
Yeah, it is. It is.
It's the semiconductor spring.
I haven't had a break.
Can't live with that one, huh?
And I'll be joining you in many of those, and especially next week at MWC, right?
Yes.
So it's going to be interesting. AI RAN probably going to be a big topic. Let's see how that shapes up. I think it's still really early for that stuff. But a lot of my focus there from a chip standpoint or a semiconductor standpoint is going to gravitate around, accelerators for, problems to solve today, right? Not like a re-architecting of the RAN or that stuff, I think, is going to take some time. But what are some of the things that you're going to be looking forward to next week?
There's going to be a lot of discussion around O-RAN and AI RAN, as well as 5G Advanced, 6G. There's also, I think we're going to see more around some of the kind of other type of mobile applications and mobile devices.
Yeah.
I did note that there's a number of robotics companies that are going to be there. So it's kind of a mixture of a lot of different things. I think there's going to be a big focus, though, on that core network and the wireless network architecture going forward.
Yeah. You mentioned core network. That one is really important, especially the transition to standalone, right? Which is progressed a lot slower than the industry has hoped. But I think the timing is actually really good now. Before it didn't make sense for a lot of operators, and so yeah, we'll have to definitely get together either in Barcelona if we have time, because it's going to be just a mad schedule for me. I'm sure you as well, but definitely let's do a recap when we get back. At the least, right? If not, we'll hang out there and try to do something live in Barcelona over some Rioja wine and tapas, right?
Sangria and tapas.
Sangria and tapas, okay.
What country are you going to? I'm going to Spain.
That's
right. Sangria, tapas. Come on.
It looks like you have Spain in the background there. It's beautiful.
Kind of, yeah. It's very similar climate.
Yeah. So
that's my backyard.
That's your backyard?
Yeah, that's my backyard.
That's incredible. That's crazy.
I live on 120 acres and border 640 acres of open state land.
Wow. Yeah. You're a genuine Ben Cartwright.
Kind of.
Remember that?
Yes.
I'm old. Just like yeah, you got it. You watched the show too, Little Joe. Okay. So hey, let's wrap it up. I got to get on another call in a little bit. So hey, Jim, thanks for jumping on, sharing your perspective. I think it was a really good conversation, albeit a short one. But hey, everyone, thanks for tuning in. Remember to follow Next Curve and Tirias Research. Follow the podcast here, which we call Silicon Futures, on YouTube as well as on Buzzsprout. Take us on your hike, your daily commute, and keep in touch and stay tuned into the tech and industry insights that matter. Until next time, Jim, we'll see you. Actually, I'm going to see you in Barcelona, so have a safe travel, and look forward to catching up over dinner.
You too. Thank you very much.
All right. Take care, everyone.
Cheers.